Hey guys. Uh, so this past winter, several of my friends and I kind of started getting into the habit of doing game night on certain occasions. Sometimes coupled with a dinner. A lot of times, after a hike or whatever, we just stop and play some games, board games, whatever, card games. And I really didn't have much in the way of games, and so it became kind of an ongoing thing where we would stop at Goodwill and raid the game section. And a lot of the stuff they have is junk and missing pieces and whatever, but there are a lot of games there that are like brand new. And and so we ended up finding this one, trekking the national parks, and it was brand new, still in shrink wrap, perfect condition. It was like $3-4, something like that. So I've picked up a number of games, and we've had some good game nights. But this is a really fun game, and it's kind of based on all of the national parks, and you move your piece around the board, and you travel to different parks. And I'm not going to get into all the rules and how it works, but it's neat because it has a cool theme. Because I love going on adventures, I love exploring. I mean, the last couple of years, I've really been focused on the state parks in Pennsylvania, going camping and hiking and biking and kayaking, all of these things. I just don't have national parks that close to me. But as we play the game, it's like, oh, I want to go see these places. And anyways, so I got invited fairly last minute to go camping with a group of friends down in West Virginia in Somersville. And, you may have seen my other video that I put together about Somersville Lake. We did some hiking, we did some kayaking, amazing lake, beautiful scenery. I also had a video up of the bridge walk, which we did, which is the New River Gorge Bridge in New River Gorge National Park. And that was just an amazing experience. But as I was kind of looking to what I was going to do while I was there, because, I mean, when you're camping with a group, you don't always, expect everybody else to have an itinerary. So, let me just see what's in the area, see if there's anything I want to do. Initially, I thought, there were a few rails to trails. I was going to take my bike. And, but when I realized that, I was looking at the bridge and it's in a national park. It's like, when's the last time I've been to a national park? And we've been playing this game a while back. And I got it. It's a huge park, and I just got to check this out. And so this video is about that adventure. One of my friends that was camping with us, Chris, she really wanted to hike as well and was also interested in seeing the park. Like I said, I can't be staying in this campground like 20 some minutes away from a national park without just taking a whole day and dedicating it to going and exploring every part of this park. I mean, the park has 4 different visitor centers. There's all these, a variety of activities and things. A day doesn't do it justice, but I had, I looked at the National Park Service app, and there's the things to do and places to go and things to see sections in the app. And I was like, there's a lot of neat stuff here. And, Chris seemed interested in it as well, so she was a little torn, wanted to go kayaking again, but I'm glad she came along because it was good to have a partner exploring the park, just from a safety standpoint of not hiking alone. Although sometimes I do like to go out by myself, but it was fun. We drove around, we saw all the things, and we had a good day. And so I want to bring that adventure to you now, and so enjoy. New River Gorge National Park. New River Gorge National Park. For most of its course, and much of its recent history, New River has served the human needs of the southern Appalachian region. Within New River Gorge National Park and Preserve, it creates a world of its own, 53 miles of whitewater and wild beauty. Human history, wild habitat, and spectacular natural beauty converge in this protected stretch of New River and its extended family, Bluestone and Gauley Rivers. Famous for sport fishing and whitewater rafting, the rivers and surrounding landscape offer hidden delights for those who venture off the beaten path. Coal mines that fueled the age of steam, rails and roads that opened this remote country to industry, and trails that lead to a blanket of spring wildflowers or a limitless horizon. It was my hope that this single-day exploration of the New River Gorge would cover the highlights of the region. It's a big park, and there's a lot to see, and I think we pulled it off. At the beginning of the day, we headed over to the Grandview area. Across from the visitor center, there's an overlook, and from the overlook you can see for miles in both directions of the gorge, and it was quite a view. Then we headed over to hike the tunnel trail, and that was pretty neat. A lot of rocks to climb through and little caves and tunnels in the rock formations. And it was a short trail, but it was pretty neat, and climbed up in a bunch of things and spotted some areas that we were calling bear caves, and we had some fun with the area.
It actually is a bear cage.
Rawr. And heading in the other direction from the overlook, we started hiking on Castle Rock Trail. And I had seen pictures of this in the park app, and was just impressed with how big the rocks were, just huge. And, people were so small on the trail in comparison, and it sure delivered. It was just beautiful views all along there, going through rhododendrons and hemlocks and big rock formations, just a beautiful area to hike. And then when we got out to Castle Rock, it was just massive. And as far up as you could see almost, and as far down as you could see, just this huge rock face. And it's pretty amazing. So I enjoyed that. And once we got up to the end of the trail, there were a couple overlooks, and then the path back to the, there was a pretty flat trail that headed back to the visitor center. So we went back that way, which was a nice walk as well. The visitor center didn't open till noon. So, fortunately, when we got done with our hike, I was kind of lollygaggling along at the end of the hike because I wanted to make sure we could get in the visitor center. And we got back about 10 till or so. So we just burned off some time wandering around. And Chris actually spotted some pawpaws on the ground, and I hadn't had pawpaws in years. And so I was pretty excited to find those. They just they're so yummy. And you can't find them in stores. So we ate a couple pawpaws for a snack. Then the visitor center was open. We went in and got our passports stamped. And then we headed off to the next area of the park to explore. Then we headed down to the old railroad ghost town of Thurmond, where the old depot is still there. That's the visitor center, and there's a number of old buildings, along the railroad tracks there that are still in pretty decent shape. The National Park Service is working on fixing them up on the inside, and I expect that they'll eventually open some of them up for tours, and probably set them up like they would have been back in the day, and people can look in there and get an idea. So I'll share a little bit of information from the National Park Service on Thurmond. Thurmond was the heart of the New River Gorge, carrying shipments of coal from surrounding coal fields to industrial areas nationwide. The downtown is open year-round. The depot, which is the visitor center, is only open seasonally. And it's just a neat place to check out. So the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway was completed in 1873, the same year that Captain W.D. Thurmond acquired 73 acres of land along the railroad. It was a strategic location to develop a town. Thurmond soon became the center of activity in the gorge, carrying shipments of coal from the surrounding coal fields. As the coal and timber industries expanded, the town and yard grew to meet growing needs, businesses thrived and Thurmond became one of the busiest stops on the C&O line. Activity at the depot peaked in 1910 when Thurmond boasted shipment of more freight tonnage than Cincinnati, Ohio, and Richmond, Virginia combined. That same year, 75,000 passengers passed through the town depot. 2 hotels, 2 banks, restaurants, a movie theater, and other town amenities served visitors and residents alike. Thurmond thrived through the early decades of the 20th century until the Great Depression and changing transportation impacted the town's economy. In the 30s, America's growing love for automobiles and improved roads led to less train travel. In the late 1940s, the C&O Railway purchased diesel engines and began making the transition from steam to diesel-powered trains. Thurmond was a steam town, its rail yard and crew geared towards servicing steam locomotives. Many of the jobs and rail yard structures became obsolete. After visiting Thurmond, we headed up to find the Long Point Trail. One of the volunteer workers in the visitor center at Grandview had recommended it. And I think it was also recommended when we were doing the bridge walk because the Long Point Trail goes through the woods and then it comes out on this large rock outcropping, and it's said to be the only place in the park where you can see the entire New River Gorge Bridge unobstructed. I mean, obviously, from above, you can see it below the bridge as well. So it sounded like a really good view, and we'd already seen several overlooks. So that was one of the spots I really wanted to see in the park. The volunteers that were down in Thurmond were kind of trying to talk us out of it, saying it would be too busy, we wouldn't find parking, but we didn't have a problem with it. It was a pretty hike. Kind of goes through some fields and kind of like prairie land, it looked like, with a lot of birds and wildflowers, and it was a pretty area at the beginning of the walk. It wasn't as strenuous as a hiking trail. It was more of a pretty flat path, and there were a lot of people on it, and the parking lot was mostly full. So we saw a lot of people, but we knew that we'd have a good view at the end of the day, and it was still a pretty walk. The last couple tenths of a mile or so got a lot more rocky as it led us down, to the rock outcropping that is the overlook. And it was just really neat out there. I mean, you could see in all directions, and it was a little sketchy, just don't get too close to the edge, because if you fell off of there, I mean, you're gone. But, and I don't mean to laugh about it, but, it was a really nice view, and there was quite a few people just coming and going the whole time. While we were out there was a couple of kids. They were doing their homecoming proposal, or whatever it is they're doing nowadays, where they hold the sign, "Will you go to homecoming with me?" So they had me take their picture posing with the bridge in the background, and so we did that, got some pictures ourselves, took a little break, and then headed back to hike back to the truck. So that was a pretty neat hike. Got to see some pretty nature, and even though there were a lot of people on the trail, I mean, everybody was friendly, and we stopped and we were taught some kids how to blow through an acorn hat to make a whistle, and we ran into just a bunch of interesting people. So that was a fun part of the park to visit as well. The final part of the park that I wanted to explore was the old mining town of Nuttallburg. It's down in the bottom of the gorge along the railroad. There's a mine up in the hillside, and a coal tipple that's down along the railroad tracks, and there's a few foundations for some old buildings that are down in there. Nuttallburg was one of nearly 50 towns that sprang up along the New River in response to a growing nation's need for coal. In 1870, England-born entrepreneur John Nuttall saw opportunity in the coal-rich New River Gorge and began buying land and building infrastructure along the Keeney's Creek drainage. When the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway was completed through the gorge in 1873, the town was ready for its arrival. Nuttallburg was the second mining town in the New River Gorge to ship the smokeless coal, processed from the mineral seams hundreds of feet above the river corridor and shipped to industrial cities hundreds of miles away. Nuttallburg was a bustling mining community by the turn of the century, continuing to thrive after Nuttall's death in 1897, under the direction of his heirs. It was pretty neat to see the tipple still standing, still pretty much intact. So coal was sized and sorted in the tipple and then loaded onto railroad cars on tracks underneath. Connecting the mines, which were way up in the hillside, to the tipple that was down by the tracks was a long conveyor. Smokeless coal of the New River mines produced a high-quality fuel coke required for steel production. There was a long string of coke ovens just upstream from the coal tipple. I tell you, we could have spent so much more time in Nuttallburg. I really wanted to hike the trails that went up along the conveyor route, and there's a trail from above that comes down to the mine entrance in the head house that's at the top of the conveyor. I think those would have been neat to see as well, but it just started to get too late in the day, and with that 4-mile drive up the narrow, windy, single-lane road, I wasn't looking forward to doing that after dark, so I made sure we cleared out of that road before we hit sunset. So we had to cut our exploration of Nuttallburg a little short, but I think we saw the highlights. But I hope you enjoyed coming along with this adventure through the New River Gorge National Park. There's so much to see. Could totally do several days there, but we had a good time exploring, and I think we saw most of the highlights of the park. So, looking forward to visiting other national parks as well. See you next time.